Recently, I decided that I would watch all of well-renowned filmmaker Quentin Tarantino's movies. So far, I've watched Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and both have quickly become some of my favorite movies in recent memory. If you've seen both of these films, you know that they share a lot of similarities. One of these similarities is the inclusion of several morally reprehensible characters. Characters who we are not supposed to think of as good people, nor who we should aspire to be. And yet, these characters are fun to watch. They are emotionally compelling, and they are even likable in spite of and sometimes because of their ethically flawed actions. And this got me thinking about other characters who fit this description. And even beyond simple villain characters, I don't think it's all that uncommon for a movie or television show to feature someone that the audience is definitely not supposed to idolize, and for the audience to love them nonetheless. But why are we, as good people with good morals, able to watch and enjoy a character with bad morals so thoroughly? Surely watching Mr. White gun down 2 police officers right after performing a heist would make us dislike this person. Surely watching Barney Stinson, a man in his late 30s, lie to women a decade younger than him to trick them into sleeping with him would make us dislike this person. Surely watching Rick Sanchez abandon an entire reality where he had turned every person on the planet into an amorphous monster except his family, leave most of them in that reality, bury the dead bodies of himself and his grandson from another reality, and then sit down, have a drink, and watch some TV like it meant nothing to him, should make us dislike this person. But it doesn't. Why? The answer which many would draw is simply that it's fun, and that is completely correct. Sometimes it is fun to simply see the most fucked up things that the human mind could conceive of, because everyone has fucked up thoughts. Just as an example, according to Wikipedia, 50 to 91% of people surveyed on several American university grounds have admitted to having thoughts about homicide ranging from vague ideas of revenge to detailed plans of how to carry out the task. But obviously, we all know that murder is not okay, and so most people don't do it, because we understand that our actions have consequences. However, art is a consequence-free zone. It is a place where you can indulge in anything that you know not to do in real life. Murder, rape, both at the same time, and maybe you indulge in them a little more than most, if you know what I mean. Who cares? Because no matter how much you enjoy it, or even how immersed you become in the experience, eventually the movie will end, the credits will roll, and you'll get up from your seat and move on with your day as a morally sound person. Because you know the difference between fantasy and reality, and if you don't, then you are definitionally psychotic. And while the immoral actions that a character takes can be enjoyable to witness and even have the potential to make us like them at face value, I don't think that's what makes them a compelling character. An emotionally resonant character, a character that makes you want to see them have a happy ending even if you know they don't deserve it. I think that part of the answer is the circumstances surrounding them. Anyone is capable of great good or great evil depending on the situation. Circumstances give a story the option to somewhat justify the immoral actions of the character in question and offer a more sympathetic view on them than what you might get if you stuck only to their victim's point of view. I think of how Avatar: The Last Airbender portrays Azula as this merciless, unempathetic, horrible person who is perfectly okay with and sometimes even excited at the opportunity to do unspeakably horrible things. And while there is absolutely no excusing her actions and the harm that they caused for countless individuals, she is not treated like a one-note villain. She is treated like a human being. She has depth and complexity and reasons for why she takes the actions that she does. We learn that Azula gained her outlook on the world because her father constantly reinforced to her and their entire country that the Fire Nation was the superior nation and that they were doing the right thing by continuing the war. And on top of this, and the fact that she is royalty, Azula was a natural-born firebending prodigy, outdoing her older brother and seemingly everyone else around her consistently. It only makes sense that this child would grow up to become the person that we see in the show. Knowing this, it doesn't seem too unreasonable for one to say that Fire Lord Ozai carries just as much, if not more, blame for how his daughter turned out than even she does. It can even be taken a step further because we see in flashbacks that Ozai's grandfather, Sozin, who started the 100-Year War, believed that by invading the other nations he was was spreading the prosperity which the Fire Nation was experiencing. And as such, we can assume that he taught this to his son Azulon, who then taught it to his son Ozai, who then taught it to Azula. So then, is Sozin the one who truly holds the blame? Well, I don't think so. I don't think that the responsibility falls solely on one person. Yes, if Sozin hadn't started the war, things would be much better during the time period of the show proper, but the same can be said for Azulon or Ozai continuing the war. And the fact that there were members of this family who managed to break the cycle stands as even stronger proof of this. This is all to illustrate that there is more to a character's immoral actions than simply they think it's okay. There is often a logical reason that shows us why they think their actions are okay, or barring the possibility of a mental disorder, an explanation of their intentions. For example, this is why Thanos is renowned as such a well-written antagonist, and why the audience is able to sympathize with him despite his misguided methodology. And to understand why this is the case, we must first establish why we as humans would be inclined to dislike people who we see as morally reprehensible. It's not necessarily because they have misguided values, but rather because those values give us insight into their potential future actions, because one's actions are really the only thing that will affect others. So when we see, for example, Thanos wipe out half of the Earth's population, knowing that he is only doing so because he cares about preserving the lives of the species which he has saved, and wholeheartedly believes that this is the best solution to solving overpopulation, despite knowing that we would have approached the problem differently, we are able to assume that if he had realized a better solution that caused less suffering, he would have taken it. We are able to empathize with Thanos' intentions. And if I had to boil down what I believe the answer to the proposed question from earlier in this video is, I would boil it down to empathy. The ability to understand and relate to what another person is feeling is a powerful force. It is what drives emotional connection both in fiction and in real life. And in a sense, we are able to explore ourselves through the empathy that we feel towards these fictional characters. And this is where I believe morally reprehensible characters are the most fascinating. By empathizing with a character who does bad deeds, you must inherently recognize that you yourself understand what that's like and why they might do so. And this may take the form of a justification for their actions, the sentiment that maybe they aren't so bad after all. But we cannot excuse their actions, and so in order to face the fact that they must pay the price for their morally reprehensible deeds, we must admit that we are not as morally perfect as we would like to believe. These characters force us to confront the worst parts of ourselves, the parts that we may like to say don't exist, and then try to improve. Because we don't want to end up like Vincent or Azula or Thanos. These characters are a warning, a demonstration of justice. If you do bad things will happen to you. But there is hope, both for these characters and subsequently the audience. There is the possibility of redemption. Redemption arcs are everywhere nowadays, and while a lot of people would just point to Zuko from Avatar as the reason why, I think it runs deeper than that. Of course, this is not to understate The Last Airbender's influence. In an age where sharing information about yourself to the entire world could not possibly be easier, I think the idea that you're alone and that no one else understands what you're going through has become an overall easier sentiment to dispel. Not necessarily easy, but easier. It's really not that hard to find a community of people who share your interests and/or experiences, people who you can empathize with. And of course, this extends to the mistakes we've made, the instances in our life that we want redemption for, and in some cases, the instances that we have already gotten redemption for. And I think that all of this collective realization of what others have been going through likely played a part in the popularization of redemption arcs in mainstream media. Furthermore, the redemption arc is simply a powerful message inherently. As I said, these morally reprehensible characters serve as a warning, but when they achieve redemption, they are also a beacon of hope. They show us that even if we make mistakes, even if we hurt people, we aren't hopeless, and just because you've done some bad things in the past doesn't mean you cannot do good things in the future. We all have demons, and what's so beautiful about these characters is that they can help us move past them. They can make us acknowledge our flaws, they can give us advice, they can keep us on the right path, and they can show us the better life that awaits us at the end of it. It's kinda ironic, really. These characters so often hurt people within the universes that they exist, and yet in the real world, they so often help people. So I guess what I'm basically saying is, let's do a heist, I wanna cut off a guy's ear!